Welcome to Expert Talks by Kalkine TV. My name's Sage and today's guest is Guy Damskin, the Managing Director at Equinix. And Australian businesses are planning major investments in digital technologies to support ambitious expansion plans following lessons learned from the pandemic. Equinix 2022 Global Tech Trends Survey was conducted recently, and to share the findings, we have Managing Director of Equinix, Guy Damskin, here to share his insights. Welcome to the show, Guy.
Hi, Sage. Good to be with you.
Thanks so much for being available, Guy. So great to hear that you've actually put so much effort into surveying so many of these businesses. What is the main motivation behind commissioning the Equinix 2022 Global Tech Trends Survey, please?
Yeah, so just a little introduction into Equinix. Some of your viewers may not be familiar with us. I recognise that we're not necessarily a consumer brand name. So Equinix is the largest owner and operator of interconnected co-location data centres around the world. And what we mean by that is there's 240 these data centres in over 27 countries, 67 markets. Here in Australia, we operate 18 sites, and that's across Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra, Sydney, Perth, and of course Melbourne. And so quite a large footprint we have here in Australia. So this was the 5th year that we've commissioned the Global Tech Trends Survey. So it's given us a really nice sample of data over that period of time now. And really what it showed us, despite what we're reading in the media at the moment about a bit of doom and gloom out there, unfortunately, but happily what the Tech Trend Survey showed us this year is that despite all of the headwinds in the economy, Australian companies by and large are looking to expand. And in fact, over 70% said that within the next 12 months, they're looking at some sort of geographical expansion, whether that be an existing market into a new city or even a new country.
Wow, that's fantastic to hear. So every year, have you found that the number of companies you were surveying grew with each survey that you've done over the last 5 years?
We try to keep the sample size generally fairly similar so that it doesn't skew the numbers too much. And actually, over the last 5 years, it has been generally optimistic in tone. Really, what we're trying to identify is the technology trends that are out there. What are customers and partners and prospects thinking about more and more? What's top of mind? As an example, 5G would have been something that probably wasn't as prevalent 5 years ago, but certainly is on top of respondents' minds at the moment. And about, how do they best deploy that and monetize that and use that in their IT infrastructure stack and to create a competitive advantage.
Thanks, Guy. Actually, that's a great segue to the next discussion point. And fintechs have always been encouraged in Australia. I think there's been a lot of investment incentives into that area. Can you share some of the headline findings from this year's report, please?
Yeah, so look, fintechs is certainly one that comes up quite a lot. And when we're asked about digital disruption, particularly through COVID, you wouldn't have to go too far to think about fintech as being one of the industries that has done some of the most disruption and also continues to create the same or even outsized opportunity. Even if you think about how we would have approached digital payments pre-pandemic, and you think about now, using digital payments really is just something that so many people have come to know and use, and candidly, using cash or other ways of paying for services can seem quite kind of archaic now. Even my mother-in-law is using PayWave to pay for a coffee, so it's disrupted everybody everywhere. I know another one of the key things that we found from the survey was around 60% of respondents, slightly over, they actually said that the technology changes they had to make during the pandemic, 60% of people have said they're here to stay. And so those investments that were made because we had to, companies have now adapted to using those as just part of their day-to-day business as usual.
Yes, thank you for that. So what, in your opinion, is stimulating further investment by businesses into technology, and what benefits does interconnection and access to rich ecosystems provide, please?
So I think as we think about the proliferation of data, and so a really good example of this, and incredibly unfortunate that we have to do this, but when you think about the COVID apps that state governments came up with to check into venues, and then you think about the enormous amount of data that had to be captured, analysed, and then actually distributed back out to users or citizens in terms of push notifications, so people knew where they'd been, where to avoid, did they need to isolate, that sort of thing. That is a really real world example of how the amount of data that we're creating and capturing and needing to analyze is just expanding at such a huge rate. And so really what we see is that, certainly during the pandemic, but also subsequent to that now, there's just a number of ways that people are using data to create either business value, organisational value, or in this case, value for our citizens.
Thank you, Guy. That's so true. I think ever since the GFC, the way we've interacted with data and the way our business operations in regards to employee engagement has become so much more important. So thanks for sharing those insights. So how has the pandemic impacted businesses? You've touched on it a little bit. Can we elaborate further into digital first strategies now seeming to be more favoured amongst the majority of businesses, please?
Yeah, so Sage, one of the things that people talk about quite a lot is digital transformation. And candidly, it's probably more of an evolution. This is not going to stop. We just continue to digitalise across industries. Certainly here in Australia, we see the mining and resources sector as being absolutely world leading in how they're adapting some technologies. But I think the by and large, what we saw come through the surveys is that respondents are now talking about digital first or thinking digital first. And so that is how I interact with my users, how I interact with my customers or my employees has to be digital first, front of mind before you do anything else. And so it's really probably over the last 5 years, that evolution into thinking about digital as a part of your strategy versus now digital is the start of your strategy.
Thanks, Guy. The report found that 69% of companies are moving to an everything as a service type platform. How will that benefit business growth in your opinion, please?
So when we refer to everything as a service, cloud computing has certainly made this very popular in IT. And for those of your listeners that may not be familiar with cloud computing, essentially this is when you rent computing infrastructure resources like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle Cloud. But really, we've actually seen that again, bringing it back to a consumer lens, how we consume streaming services, as an example, signing up to a long contract and being committed for a 2-year period of time are gone. As we now know, you can sign on for whatever your streaming service is of choice, or multiple in many cases. And then if you don't like it and you've watched your show, you can turn it off. It's the same thing for business. When we're talking about everything as a service, it's really now companies have this ability to lease services on an hourly rate, on a monthly rate, turn up for what they may use, and then switch it back down when they don't need it. A terrific example of this is in the retail space. And so as retailers hit periods of time of the year that may be busy for sales, like seasonal sales, such as winter or Christmas, then they're able to spin up these resources to the maximum of what they need and then turn them down so that during the rest of the year, they're not paying for what they're not using.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. That sounds really cost efficient. So thanks, Guy. We're reaching the end of this very informative discussion. Finally, the survey showed that there is a big focus on sustainability of IT infrastructure. How is Equinix helping customers manage their environmental impact?
Yeah, so that's another one of the big trends, Sage, that we've seen come through over the last 5 years. Sustainability has always been important, but over 3/4 of respondents this time said that it's really central to how they're thinking about their long-term strategy. In terms of how Equinix is helping our customers, we are very, very pleased to be the first global data center operator anywhere in the world to commit to the Paris Climate Change Accord, where essentially there's 3 aspects to us reducing our carbon emissions, moving to 100% renewable energy, and working with our supply chain. And so customers moving to Equinix or working with us can be safe in the knowledge that we're working very hard towards those sustainability objectives, which will ultimately mean that these organisations we work with will be able to pass on that downstream positive impact to their customers.
That sounds great. What a great mission to be on. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today, Guy. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, Sage.
And thank you for those who joined us on that informative discussion. If you missed any part of that, please head to Kalkine Media's YouTube channel and check out the chat we just had with Guy Damskin. He's the Managing Director from Equinix. And as we say here at Kalkine, do stay apprised and invest wise. This is Sage signing off.